Welcome back to the E3 podcast. I am excited to have Dixie Decker on today to talk about her amazing journey through real estate and being a woman entrepreneur and some pretty cool stuff with student housing. So welcome. I'm glad to have you on here. I'm glad we got connected.
Yes, thank you for having me.
Sure. So do you want to just kind of quick tell people sort of your bio a little bit?
Sure. So I always say this is like anytime I do these interviews, everyone wants to know about the numbers and the money and the real estate deals. And I think it's really important, especially for your followers and whether it's women or men, to understand who you're listening to and to know a little bit about where they came from and are they really doing deals in today's world, and make sure you're surrounding yourself with people that are, up to date and doing real stuff now. So as much as I hate telling the story, because I know everyone wants like the details of the real estate transaction, I share the story, and it's often hard for me because I'm from the Midwest, from Springfield, Missouri. And I was raised with that very Midwest mentality of you don't share your financial information with people, you don't talk politics or religion, and you just keep to yourself. And so for me to tell my story, where I came from, it's my personal story and my journey, but I've learned over time that I tell this story because I know I'm not alone in what I went through. And so if it gives one person a glimmer of hope that there's possibility for change, that's why I tell it. And so it might be boring to some, but I know that every time I do this type of thing, my goal is one person can walk away from listening to this with a glimmer of hope. And so if we rewind a little bit, I really got into real estate in 2013. And rewinding from there, in 2010 and 11, I had realized I was departing my past life. So I was with my ex-husband for about 15 years through dating and marriage. We had 2 daughters. And in that relationship, there was drug abuse, alcohol abuse. There was other women in my marriage I didn't know about, and then mental, emotional, and physical abuse. And so I called it quits when that happened in front of my oldest daughter. And I just said, this is not the life that we deserve. I can put up with other things, we can do counseling, but I'm drawing the line, I'm done. And it had been going on for a long time. And so it was the lowest of the low. So I didn't graduate college. I had children young, even though I was married. So here I am in 2010, and I called myself, I felt like the black sheep of my family. When you get married, you stay married. Everyone was supposed to go to college and get their degree and get a corporate job and have a retirement account and the little white picket fence to go along with it. Yep. And so I've done all the things you're not supposed to do, right? My dad really raised me with a lot of knowledge about how to keep your credit score good. And I did buy my first house when I was 18. But I did that traditionally with a day job and going to the bank and all of those things. So I knew what traditional real estate was. And when my ex-husband left in 2010, I realized why he was home every day at 2 o'clock checking the mailbox. And it was because I had a little over $150,000 worth of debt that I didn't know about with my beautiful 700 plus credit score.
Oh, wow. And
at the time I was just working a day job. I was, probably making $30,000 a year, and I had 2 kids. And when he left everything to me, which most people are like excited about. But I had, he was a contractor. So we had built a forever home. It was on 5 acres. It was next to my parents' house. But I got all the debt with that. I got all the debt he put in my name I didn't know about. He left with a free and clear truck, and I got the kids. And that's a good thing based on what was happening with his life. to kind of protect them from that. So here I am, a single mama, broke, and I went to an attorney and they're like, you're never going to dig out of this. You just have to file bankruptcy. And I'm just like, I can't add this to the list, you know, the black sheep list. And, but he goes, it's not like you're, you know, carrying around Louis Vuitton purses and shoes. Like you're not going to get out of this. And so as humiliating as that moment felt for me, it was relief as well when it was over, that like I could have a fresh start. But with that fresh start, I knew there was limitations to what you can do when you file bankruptcy and you don't have credit now. And I was used to having credit. I was raised having credit. So I went to, similar to people who's following you and listening and learning, I went to my now husband. I just married him in November in Jamaica. He's actually been my best friend since 7th grade. And he met me for lunch at Panera Bread amongst this like process of divorce and becoming single and all of that. And he said, here's this real estate book. Let's read to chapter 5 and we'll have lunch again. And I'm like, oh, okay, you know, and again, I was a single mom. So eventually that's kind of what turned into us dating, was these lunch dates at Panera, because I was, you know, working and then going home to the babies. And so after one day at lunch, he says, hey, let's go to this one-day seminar about this real estate stuff. And I did have my license to be a realtor. So he had told me he was an entrepreneur and he was a real estate investor. And we were going to go to this seminar. So I'm like, okay, sure. Let me see if my mom will help me out with the kids and we'll drive up to Kansas City and go to this meeting. And that's where I met my real estate mentor, was at that one-day meeting. And my mentor was Ron LeGrand. So what I figured out was Brandon was not an investor. He was like swinging the hammer, fixing up like one house a year. And he was sleeping on the couch at a friend's house because he made no money and he was fresh out of the military. And so he was just as broke as I was. And, you know, but I was like, oh, I'm dating this real estate investor and I'm going to be his realtor and that'll help me get by, you know? And so after I met Ron, though, that was about 2013, you know, because it just took time to get through that mess of life. It takes time. Yeah. And rediscovering who you are and what you want. But I knew traditional real estate was not going to be possible without being able to get a bank loan. You have to be bankable. Mm-hmm. So that dream was really, I'd always loved real estate, but I knew that was a goner. So meeting Ron was just an aha moment, because that's where I learned these words like wholesaling and subject tos and lease options and owner financing. And I just left like crying. Like there is a light at the end of this tunnel. Like I'm smart, I can do these things. And so we came back, and as we continued to date, we just started this business. And before I knew it, I quit my day job and I was wholesaling like crazy. Nice. So I had to, you know, I was like, it was like survival mode for me, because I couldn't make it on what we were doing with just 2 kids, you know, with a day job. And so that's kind of where it all started. And I'm always so thankful I went to that seminar. I ended up, after doing several transactions, all those different creative ways, I ended up teaching for Ron for a while and helping his students. And then during that journey from 2013 to 2017, Ron realized that I was putting college students in my houses that I was buying all these different ways. And so he's like, you have to start telling people about this. Like, no one's talking about student housing, so you're going to teach my people student housing. I'm like, whoa, whoa, whoa. I've never done public speaking a day in my life. Like, there's no way you're putting me in front of people. And he's like, yep, welcome to stage. So that's kind of how it started. And I can tell, if anyone wants, I can tell about like our first deal, how that kind of happened for student housing or what that means. Like, you kind of just tell me what people want to know. And
yeah, I mean, I'm curious to know, like, well, a couple of things. One is I love Ron LeGrand. He was my mentor too, not my paid mentor, because he doesn't know that, but like getting started, like literally 2003, I guess, was when I started. And it was like driving around in the car, listening to those Ron LeGrand cassette tapes.
Yep.
and my kids in the back seat going, ugh.
Mine too.
And just, and I just remember being so amused by him. I mean, he just said like he had the best like one-liner things that would just
Absolutely.
make me laugh, but he was so, I don't know. He has a great way of teaching, and presenting information. He's entertaining,
He does.
smart.
Yes, and those are the basics of, I think, what everyone needs to know in order to make creative deals. I just think it's such a huge asset to have in your tool belt. I didn't even know what those words meant before meeting him. So, and here I am, like, we created this business from nothing, from scratch. And we couldn't have done that without learning that information.
Yeah, for sure. That's how I learned too. It was just listening to him and reading a bunch of books.
Yep.
And I wasn't a realtor, so
Yep.
I knew absolutely nothing. I didn't know the terminology at all. I didn't have a real estate background or anything, but Ron showed me the way.
That's food for thought for everyone, is that you don't have to know what it all means to get started in it. It's just, you don't know anything until you know it. Like, you don't just go start a job one day because you already knew how to do it. You always have to learn. No matter what it is, you learn it, whether it's being an entrepreneur or starting a real estate business or going to work.
Yeah.
There's always something you're learning. So you just get to choose what that is.
I love that. And that's part of that entrepreneur mindset too, is just to always be learning. Don't stop educating. And that's the difference between people who aren't entrepreneurs. It's like they will go out and get that college education, and then that's where the learning ends.
Yes.
But when you're an entrepreneur, you have to be a lifelong learner. I mean,
it is, and everything
always
changes.
Something new to learn.
Everything changes.
Yes. I mean, look at 2008. Look at this year. Like, who would have thought any of this stuff would ever happen?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So I'm curious to know kind of how you fell into the student housing thing.
Yeah, so because you know Ron, it makes it even that much more fun actually to tell this part of the story. Brandon was in the military, and so when he had gotten out of the military, I remember having lunch with him at Panera, and he was telling me him and one of his battle buddies got this money to go back to college. And so with that money, they were going to like buy this little house and fix it up and live in it, and then eventually they would rent it to college kids. And I remember saying during that lunch meeting, I was like, you're crazy. Like, I actually don't know that you can get homeowners insurance on a rental that college kids live in, because they're just going to destroy it. Like, they're going to have parties, and they'll probably flood bathtubs, and like, these big ragers is what I have in my mind, And he's like, no, they pay really good money to live in these houses and these rooms. And I was like, okay. So he had told me kind of what they were thinking people were paying. And I'm like, okay. And so I was kind of just like booked back in my head from that lunch we had. And then we met Ron, and he teaches you to, let's just say the first example was the lease option. Just go get a lease with an option to buy it from a seller. And then you go find rent to own buyers, and they're going to rent to own the house. So it's like a sandwich lease option, Dixie. I said, okay, that's what I'm going to, when I find one of those, that's what I'm going to do. So I did, I found one, and we put out the marketing to find someone to rent to own or lease option. Mm-hmm. Same thing, just different verbiage. And everyone that called said, oh, I don't want to buy it. I just want to live there for a couple years. I'm getting ready to graduate college. I don't want to actually put a down payment down because I just want to rent it. And I was like, oh, well, we're not renting it. It's a rent to own. So what's the most you can put down? What's the most you can pay per month? Mm-hmm. The verbiage. And so then parents would call, no, I just want to rent it for my kids. They're going to school for a couple of years. So I remember looking at Brandon, and I go, okay, Ron didn't approve we could put college kids in this house, but what if we do? All of our contracts say we can basically sublease it. So what's the difference? And he's like, well, I guess there is no difference, except it's not Ron approved. Because, you're trying, like, I'm a straight A student, so I'm always like, I want to do things right. And so I said, okay, so we put out both marketing. We put out our rent to own ad, and then we put out our per bedroom rate marketing. And then we always put in the ad, you have to fill the whole house or the whole unit. So if it's a 3-bedroom house, you have to pay for all 3 bedrooms, but we market it by the rate for the room, because that's kind of what the college kids are looking for. Mm-hmm. And on my rent to own, I was hoping to get like $850 a month for this little house. And that would have been good money for that street or that area for a single family rental. And on my college kids, I put $450 a room, and there was 3 bedrooms. So I'm like, well, you can do the math. That's a lot more cash flow per month. So let's see what happens. Well, the college kids came first. So we put them in there. And all I did on this house was paint the door red and moved these 3 college kids in. So I'm like, okay, that went really well. This is a lot more cash flow. And remember, I was broke. And so when you're only making $100 or $200 a month on a house, like you have to have a lot of houses to get monthly income.
Right.
And so when that worked, we just went gangbusters on it. Like everything, this is our goal now. We want high cash flow properties. And if anything happens with the economy again, we can always take less rent because there's so much margin. We're safe. We're safe, you know? And so that's just kind of where it started. It just kind of turned into this whirlwind of like, we've got a niche here. And most people, like I was, think student housing is this horror story, or they think student housing is these huge apartment buildings that college kids live in. And we have a few of those now, but we started the entire business off of just houses, just single family houses, and putting 3 people on a lease, all on one lease. So there's a lot of peer pressure there for everyone to pay their rent. The parents co-sign. So what other industry has that many co-signers or guarantors that you're going to get paid your rent? So when COVID hit, we still got paid our rent because there was too many people on the line that would have had damaged credit. So it's paid off well, even up till today. I mean, I can't predict what 2021 looks like for COVID, but for right now, all of our kids went back to college. They don't care if they go virtual or seated. They still want to live in our houses. They want the college experience. And so we feel really blessed and really thankful that it's all worked out that way. But it's been so much fun. And I love these rentals more than my regular rentals. My college kids actually treat my properties better than my single family rentals.
Wow. I would not have expected that, because I would have been one of the terrified people to even like student housing. Yeah, I have college kids. I know what that looks like.
Well, it's really cool what I've learned, because like no one taught me to do student housing. So I kind of just put this all together, and I made my own course and my own system and my own processes that my staff uses. And what we figured out was we charge anywhere from $450 to $650 a room per person, basically. And so one house might have as much as $2,400 security deposit on the line. So the parents really want that money back when their kids move out of our houses. So a lot of times mom and dad come down to clean up the house and give it back to us. And so it makes us really successful in, we're happy to give them back every dollar to leave us the property we gave them. And then we get to move the next group in the very next day. So we don't have downtime like other landlords do. We don't take 2 or 3 weeks to fix it up and get the next tenant in. I'm pre-leased a year before they move in. We have a waiting list, and this batch moves out on May 30th, and the next batch moves in June 1st. And it's like clockwork now. And so we love that, because a lot of landlords lose their cash flow, some of them for the whole year, because they're vacant for a month.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, oh, I can't do that. You know, I came from being broke, and I'm like, I can never go back there. Like, I have to find the most risk-free way to do business, you know? And so I just try to design everything that we did around that mantra for success for the tenants and success for us. And it's paid off really well so far, and we have fun doing it.
That's really smart. So how many of those do you have now?
So we have a little over 300 college kids that rent from us right now. And that's a combination of houses, duplexes. We just did a 20-unit apartment building. So I never really know how many properties we own. I know how many people.
That's probably better anyway, right?
Yeah.
So how does that work? I'm curious with the lease stuff. So like, do they get to pick who is leasing the house with them, or do you place people? Like,
absolutely. That's why I think we're more successful than other people that have done this type of model is that we don't match make. So and you have kids in college, so this might ring a bell for you. What we figured out is the kids for here, our college is Missouri State University. They come over, and the first year they have to live on campus. And then year 2, they don't anymore here. So they usually go to like the big apartment buildings that has the fitness center and the coffee shop and the pool, but they match make. Yeah. And they have to be students. They have to show their ID. And then, so that puts them into like year 3 and 4 of their education when they're looking for a more private space. So they've done the dorms, they did the apartment building and they partied. And now year 3 and 4, they're looking for something a little bit more cozy. They want to study a little bit more. They want to graduate. Like their goals are starting to shift. And so by natural behavior, we're getting year 3, 4 and graduate students renting from us. And so what I figured out was I just need to charge less than what they're used to paying to live in the dorms, except they get to live with me for 12 months for the same price or less than what they had to pay at the dorms for 9 months. And then their parents don't have to move them in and out during the summer. They just get to stay put. And so that's been very, very helpful. And because they like who they're living with, they usually stay there for a year or 2 years. You don't become their parent, you're just their landlord. And when you match make, you can become their parent very quickly. And so we've tried it. I don't advise it.
That's good to know.
Yeah. So they come to us with their friends, like one person calls in and then they bring their friends and they all sign the lease together and onward they go.
Nice. That's interesting. Because that's, and you're so right. Like how that all falls into place, because that's exactly what's happened with my daughter, because she's away at college. So I have 2 that are in college, but one of them lives at home and just drives back and forth, but the other one is away. Yes. And it was the same kind of deal. Like she had to be in the dorm the first year, and then she got somehow she ended up applying and getting a dorm actually by herself, which was crazy. And then from that, and that was like her I think her second year. Yep. And now we're in year 3, and she was in an apartment, but she got match made. Yeah, with somebody. And she's like, he's crazy. And, he's got this crazy cat and all this stuff, so now she's moving on from that to another place where she's actually got to, I think they match made her again, but it's with somebody more compatible. But that whole thing just was like a lot of anxiety around all that. And I had considered buying a house to rent for her, but.
Absolutely. And they love it because now they've chose their people. They feel safer. They still can have parties. We don't care. We're not their parents. So we don't monitor that. We just monitor them paying rent and returning a nice property. And I love that because a lot of people also think that college or student housing is slummy or slumlordish, and our houses are beautiful. I go all granite, hardwoods, tile. They're beautiful houses. If I rehab them, they're gorgeous. And if I'm buying, I call it Ron's way still, but if I'm buying on terms or creatively, I'm not looking for dumps. I'm looking for already pretty nice houses that like another mom bought for her kid, and they've already fixed it up, and now they just can't sell it on the market for what they bought it for, because they always buy them at retail,
Yeah. Do you run into that a lot?
Yeah. So most of the time, so we just, even yesterday, we looked at one, it was a dad. He's like, I'm out of state. My kids went to college here. I'm through the 3rd boy. He graduates this year, so I'm ready to sell it. I don't want to be a landlord. Just throw me an offer. And so we have a deal. And he just doesn't want to come down. He doesn't want to touch it. He doesn't want to move them out. And it has all new windows. It has an all new roof, all new vinyl siding. He redid all the plumbing, all the electrical. So literally, I just need to put a little bit of a female's touch on it with a little bit of paint and cleaning and a little landscape, and I'm in, and it's ready to go. So those are wins for me, and they don't want to come down and do anything. So I love those. We also get a lot of tired landlords that have done the student housing slumlord version for years. And they've depreciated all the money they can depreciate out of the property, and they're done with it. but those need work. So of course I use private money to buy those kinds of deals. And I'm happy to do that. So we fix those up for longevity. You know, we definitely make sure we don't, if we're going to do it, we want to gut it. We want all the plumbing, all the electrical up to date, because we're in this game for a while. We're still relatively young. And so we don't want something we have to sell in a few years. We want it to last, you know.
Right.
And I think most anyone, I would forewarn anyone in real estate, just because I'm talking about the student housing niche, make sure you have multiple exit strategies.
Yes.
So even though we're in COVID and we have this student thing, we don't know if they're going to be virtual or seated or whatever. I know all of my houses, if I want to put them on the retail market tomorrow, I can. I've got a margin. I can sell them. I can liquidate them. I can make a lot or a little, but I will always be able to pay them off, you know, or sell them. I can put rent to own buyers in them. I know I have multiple strategies that would still work for these properties, even though I'm utilizing them for student housing. So my rehabs are still retail ready.
Yeah, I like that. And so are you, like with these properties, so you're saying it's like older college students usually that are renting these out. How do you market to them? How are you finding those students?
So really the same way everyone else is finding their tenants. What's fun is that I don't have to choose the older tenants. Just by the natural behavior, that's how they're coming to us. Mm-hmm. But we do all the same marketing everyone else does. I use Appfolio for my database for my rental management software. But before that, because that's so automated, like you click a button and it markets everywhere. It's so easy. But we just transferred over to that about a year and a half ago, maybe. So prior to that, we did all the same thing everyone does. We do Zillow, we did Craigslist, we do signs in the yards. There is, for us, we have, it's called uloop.com, and it's kind of associated with the university. And so we will post like a 2-bedroom, a 3-bedroom, and a 4-bedroom. And I will only run those 3 properties all year long for marketing out there. And then our university has a second page, let's call it, on their website for alternate options for off-campus housing. And it basically just puts our name there and a phone number, and then they can contact us.
Okay.
But
I was wondering if you had any relationship with the colleges.
Really, not much, just a little bit. And then I have college kids that will go put flyers on campus for me. So they'll go put them on all of the common area bulletin boards we have it's called the shuttle. It's the Bear Line shuttle where they pick up kids from parking garages and stuff. So they'll hang them in the waiting area for the shuttle, and we pay them by PayPal. They just pick up flyers and then go put them everywhere, take pictures of where they put them, and then we pay them. But overall, our signs in the yards bring in more leads than anything else, because the college kids are walking to school, riding their bikes to school, or driving around for parking at school. So, or they partied at this house last year with their friends, and now they want it this year for themselves. That's very common too. I always joke, if you don't want people partying in your house, don't get in student housing, but get in student housing for the massive cash flow and run the system correctly so the parents give you back a nice property. Nice. But they can still have their parties. I'm not their mama.
Yeah. I like putting the responsibility, why can't I talk? Putting the responsibility on the parents and having a part of it. Because I know, like with me co-signing for my daughter, you know, it's like, you better not screw this place up. I'm gonna be mad if I got to go up there and.
Yes, but you did it, right? You co-signed for her.
Yeah, I mean, there was really no option. There's no.
Yes, so that's a big hurdle that a lot of my students always ask me is, my real estate students ask me, like, how do you get the parents to co-sign? I'm like, they were trained before they met me. Everything they did at college, their parents signed for. And so the parents are just used to it. And so I love it when I meet like a real life parent that's doing it. They're like, yeah, I just didn't have an option. If she needed a place to live, I had to sign for it.
Yeah.
And so that's really how it works. It's not really questioned. It's just part of the process.
That is true. That's true. Yeah, I didn't give it a second thought. It's like, well, I
Yeah.
have to, like, how else is she going to have a place to live unless I
Yep.
sign this? And it's
Yep.
painful doing it. I mean, she's
Yep.
not crazy or anything. I don't think
Right.
she's not destructive or anything like
Mhm.
that. But still, it's like, what if something happens and then I don't get my deposit back,
Yep.
probably all the things you hear all the time.
Absolutely. And I love that because I always ask landlords, I said, when's the last time you begged your tenant to let you give them back the security deposit? And they're like, well, never. Like, most of the time we keep it. I'm like, I know. So the last month that our kids live in our houses, I call them kids, but college kids live in our houses, we start messaging them by text. And we just say, hey, your move out day is coming up soon. We'd like to do a complimentary walkthrough for you so that you have the ability to get the most of your deposit back possible. We want to give you back your deposit. And so Jessica's my assistant, and she goes and walks through and she'll say, well, you could replace these light bulbs. You need to replace those mini blinds. If you don't, then we have to charge you. And oh, that bathtub's really, really dirty. We suggest you get that cleaned because if not, we'll have to charge a deep cleaning charge, and just things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And so we had a new girl that joined us, and she'd never done move outs before. And so she helped do some of the pre-walkthroughs. And she was like, okay, well, this house is going to need a really good cleaning. And I go, no, just wait. On move out day, you're going to be greatly surprised at what you see. And so she comes back on move out day and she's like, unbelievable. These houses were beautiful. I'm like, yeah, we remind them probably once a week, all the way till their move out on that last month. Remember, we want to give you back all of your security deposit. Please don't make us keep your security deposit. Make sure you put your bulbs in and your mini blinds are fixed and your tubs and toilets are clean. And that has helped so much. And really, it's a win-win for us because we have no downtime turning over the property.
Yeah.
And so we literally beg them to please let us give their money back.
Nice.
And it's a good thing.
I like that. That's smart. I like that a lot.
Yeah.
So, it seems to me like to run a business like this, you've got really solid systems and processes in place.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about how you've developed that and how that looks for you?
Yeah. So I always anchor back to Ron. And I say, every time I met that man, he said, don't reinvent the wheel. Just do what I told you to do. And so then I worked for my dad for a period of time, and he ran a business, and he's always been really my business mentor and my advisor for life. He always was very business oriented. And when I worked for him a little bit, I realized every desk in his office had a binder. And of course, we're talking 80s, 90s, before everything was super digital.
Mm-hmm.
But he said, here's how to do this job at this desk. Here's your binder. And I was like, oh, okay. Mm-hmm. What I learned was his motto was, if it's documented, anyone can sit at that desk and get at least 70% of the job done because what someone else did, they documented. So I was like, okay. And so this desk had a binder and that desk had a binder. And as long as both binders got done, all the wheels kept moving. So in like an old clock, you see the wheels in it. And so I always think of business as an old clock. And as long as you can keep each wheel moving, then the clock works. And so as I started this business with Brandon, I was like, okay, everything I do, I must document it. Because one day I want someone else to do what I'm doing. Mm-hmm. And that's what created the systems. And then when I hire someone new, they already have 70% of, what it takes to work that position. And then they'll get faster and they'll get better. And then they'll add procedures. And then as we update things or change, software, we do the same thing. So everything started with, I just documented what I did. And now a lot of people do YouTube videos for their procedures or how they did whatever. I'm still a little old school. I still have the binders. I like to read step by step and check it off to know I'm on course, I guess, instead of hitting stop, start, stop, start. but you know, it's just each to their own there. And when Ron said, you're going to start teaching this, I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't have a course. He's like, yeah, you do. Your people use it every day in your office. Just put it all in one. I'm like, oh, okay. Okay, that makes sense. And so that's kind of how it all developed. But everybody that I've ever worked with that wants to do student housing or any type of real estate, every time they bring a problem back to me, it's because they didn't do their checklist, or they didn't follow the system, or they just didn't think they needed parents to co-sign. Well, then they had a trashed property. Well, you didn't follow the system. And so I just think I just live and die by my systems, by my procedures. And I think that your staff or even your tenants, you'll have a better relationship with all of them if you have a standard operating procedure, which is a set expectation for all parties. That's all it is.
Yep.
And we really spend a lot of time checking our tenants in. It takes about 20 minutes per group. And we spend that time with them. We give them the mom speech, we call it. And basically it's a summary of what their lease was that they signed, except it's a little more fun and it's real, it's us. And we just say, these are the expectations and we want this to be good for you. It'll be good for us. And this will be a great year. And a lot of parents that show up to those move-ins, they're just like, thank you. No one's ever spent the time with us when we moved into a property. We rarely meet our landlord. We pick up keys somewhere and we just come in. And thank you, because now they know how to operate the thermostat and the garbage disposal and like things the parents are going to teach them anyways, but it's us. And so most kids take advice better from someone else than their parent anyways, because we're just harpers, we just harp. And so the parents are like, thank you so much. So I just think that's a great way to start off your relationship with your tenants, whether it's students or regular, single family, it doesn't matter to me. I think that kickoff is the most important thing. And so it's just part of our standard system and how we operate. And I just knew I didn't want to do this as a hobby. I wanted to run it like a business. And I think if you have that mindset, you can delegate, you can have freedom for your life. And if you don't, this thing just owns you. I mean, you can quit your day job and go into real estate and work more than you did for your day job because you're just flailing around out there with no rules,
Yeah.
So that's to me, it's just so important to me that you can hire and fire, you can grow if you have a baseline or systems to follow. If you don't, it's just everyone figuring it out every day. Like, I showed up today, what's my name?
I love that. So you are like 100% speaking my language. Like everything you just said is stuff I'm always trying to tell people, if you don't have systems and processes in place, you will never get out of your business.
Never.
And every person that I talk to that complains about how much they have to work or how hard it is and stuff, and they're like, how are you able to do, because I always get how do you do it? Because I have 5 kids, right? So yeah. I mean, they're not all at home anymore, but I was still raising all of them going through this. I mean, this is 17 years of a journey here.
Absolutely.
And it's like, well, how do you do all this stuff? And it's like, dude, systems and processes. And I love that you said a binder, because I'm just like, oh, she's my people. I have a binder too.
Yes,
I use a binder. Like we have it electronically stored, in G Suite is what we use. So everything's there electronically, but it's all organized in a folder, so I have a lead manager folder and an acquisitions folder and all the stuff is in there. But then I also have this printed out hard copy binder thing with the checklist in it, with the laminated sheet, so they can dry erase. And
yes.
And I don't know, I hand it to the people, especially a younger person, and they're kind of like, oh,
Well, my daughter came to work. She's 17, so she's just started her senior year of high school, and we're searching for college for her. And she came to work for us last summer. And I really wanted to do some job sharing because Jessica is my primary assistant who really deals with all the tenants. I haven't shown a property or met a tenant in years now. So she really handles all of that. But she has 4 kids at home. So she works about 9 a.m. to about 3 or 3:30 during the school year. So she can drop them off and pick them up and go to all the sports and stuff. And I thought, we just need someone to like file paperwork and just kind of clean up after all of us as far as the stuff we don't want to do.
Yeah.
So my daughter wanted a car, and I said, well, you're going to have to pay for the car. And she's in speech and debate. And so she came to work for us. And she felt the same way about my binders or my folders. She's like, Mom, everything's online. I go, oh, well, we have it online over here. And so you're welcome to use this version of it. But us old ladies like the binder version. And she's like, okay. But what was really cool about her joining our team was she helped all of us just get a little bit more on board with some things that were still effective but saved us time digitally. And I don't let people change my systems very often, but she would be like, so Mom, you could utilize blah, blah, blah and get this result. Would you consider doing that? And I'm like, okay, well, let's look at that. So we would talk to Jessica about it. And I go, yeah, that seems like a really great change that's going to save an hour a day for everyone. And so her very young mindset was still very healthy for our team and helping us, change a few things. But I was still very much like, no, I'm keeping my paper folder for XYZ, But it's cool because she can still operate off the digital side of stuff. And then, so people can have a choice, but it's all still the same system, And I did notice that she converted over to some of my checklists because she could do the same thing. Like if she stopped and started something, she could see exactly where she had stopped. And she came to me and she goes, I realize why you like those, because when I leave at 6, I can leave it for Jessica and then she can finish out the checklist or vice versa. Jessica got this much of the checklist done and then Jaden can finish the last few of them. And so she goes, I understand why you like that. And they just pass it from their desk, So each to their own, but yeah, absolutely. The younger people like the digital a little bit better, but it works both ways. As long as it's documented, that's all that matters.
Yeah, I agree. And I think there's like plenty of room for like overlap with that stuff too. Sometimes you may be more digital with something, but like for the checklists and stuff, definitely like having that visual. For me, I'm visual, so I like seeing stuff there, and I like, but then I also like the convenience. Like if I'm in a process, I can click and it'll take me to the document that I need and stuff. But another thing that you said too, that's really important that I think people need to make note of is, you document all those systems and processes and everything, but that doesn't mean that's forever, like it's set in stone. You do have to periodically review those. And especially, like I know for us, like if some major issue comes up, and it's like, okay, and then you get through it. But then when you're done with it, it's like, okay, what did we learn from this? Like, is there something in our process that we can change? This doesn't happen again. And so you're always like reevaluating and updating and, like as new technology becomes available, maybe there's a different tool that you're going to use. So the process has to be updated then. So just not letting your processes sit there stagnant.
Absolutely.
They're living documents.
My now wonderful husband since he's ex-military, we call that after action review. Yeah. And everything deserves an after action review and then an update to the manual. And I think that's very, very important for everyone to know. I mean, through and through, if you never update it, you just die on the vine, And I giggle because we've been buying houses regularly for 7 years now. But I still have a checklist for buying houses because as I get comfortable, I forgot things, and it's silly things like, oh, do we have insurance on this house?
It's always the insurance. Always the insurance.
We're buying it today. Are we insured? Oh my gosh, we're not insured because you know what I didn't do? I didn't use my checklist because I've done this enough. I know every piece of it. Or, oh, we're buying this today. Did you put utilities in our name? Oh, I forgot utilities in our name. And so I'm like, why do I do that to myself when I have been a realtor? I provide that checklist to my clients get insurance, bring your driver's license to closing, get utilities in your name, get trash.
Mhm.
But, I'm in the wild, wild west over here buying houses and not following my own checklist.
Yep.
So I don't care how good you are at your job. Like, if you're doing enough of it, you're going to forget things. So you need a checklist.
For sure. Yeah. We never skip the checklist. It's
I
just,
still use my checklist.
yep. No,
Otherwise,
do
I have
too.
no utilities or insurance on closing day every single time.
Yep. And then when it gets missed, it's like, oh, how did
Yeah.
that happen?
And my husband always says that. How did you miss that one? I'm like, I didn't use my checklist this time.
Yep. Yep. I forgot. How do you forget? You've been doing this forever.
Yeah, so I think that's vital for people to know is, even though I created the checklist and I know the checklist and I teach the checklist, I still have to use it actually, because there's just like life happening, there's kids you're taking places, and then there's your staff, and then you have new projects, and then you have, and so you need it to follow your own rules.
Yeah. And there's so many moving pieces to this business too.
Oh, yes.
Excuse me. It's not like set it and forget it.
Yeah,
like there's always some thing that's happening that's got to be dealt with. And so when you've got all those things to fall back on, it makes running the business like running a business. Like you said, it's not a hobby. You're running this thing like for real. You've got employees and you've got, things that have to be dealt with that you just can't let slide on by.
Yeah,
going to cause problems later on down the road.
Yes, for sure.
So with all those properties, do you guys manage them yourself or do you outsource that or?
Yeah, so currently we self-manage everything basically. Jessica is my assistant. I have a second assistant, which really is my personal assistant. So they kind of run, my personal assistant runs all the businesses with me. And then Jessica specifically deals with the tenants. However, she's cross-trained to be the personal assistant, and the personal assistant is cross-trained to be the property assistant. So I also believe in cross-training, which again goes back to your procedures. But really, Jessica primarily handles all the tenants herself. And like I said, during the school year, she works 9 a.m. to about 3. And then during the summer months, we call the summer months our busy months because we only move people in and out on the last day of May, last day of June, and last day of July. So in our area, you have frozen pipes and all that great stuff in the winter time. So I don't like moving people out during that time of year. I don't like working during that time of the year. I want to be somewhere warm and on vacation all the time. So she really deals with all the tenants, and then her and I check in daily, or she shoots me emails, if there's anything that has come up, or a tenant, she did a showing and someone offered us $575 a room instead of $600 a room. Do you want to take $575 a room? Yes, I do. I would rather have $575 than nothing. So take it. And I think that's important for landlords to remember is even though you have systems and procedures, you can still have some flexibility, and don't let your greed or stubbornness get in the way of success. And so if I'm making $700 a month net cash flow on a property, I can afford to give 3 people a $25 discount to be full for 12 months. And a lot of landlords who hire property management companies, they don't get that flexibility. The owner says, I want X dollars, and if they don't get it, then they go vacant. For me, Jessica is trained. If someone has an offer, bring it to us. If we can take it, we will take it. Because I would rather be 100% full, no evictions, no credit checks, than to be vacant. Like, there's no reason for that.
Yeah.
And so she does mostly all of that. I don't have to. And we call that self-managing, since she's really my assistant managing it.
Nice.
Yeah.
So does that, is there any like particular software or anything that you use to help manage that makes it a little bit easier?
Yeah. So once we've hit like a good growth spurt, like our Microsoft Excel spreadsheets were just not cutting it anymore. We flipped over to Appfolio, APPFOLIO. And it's similar to like Buildium and a couple of those others, but you do have to have a little bit larger portfolio to have Appfolio. But it has changed our worlds. all of the automation with the leases and the applications and any maintenance that they may or may not have. It's just so nice. You can text everybody out of there, email everybody out of there. It's made it so handy. It's the front of our website, so we don't have to have like separate things working. It's all integrated by the same company. You can go in there and click post to the website, post to the internet. And so now we don't have to manually post anything but Craigslist ads. Everything else is automated. So that has been huge savings, because the reality was I probably would have needed to hire another person as we grew if we hadn't found that system. So that a couple $100 a month for that system saved us from having a whole nother employee, basically, just purely from time management aspect only.
So much cheaper than hiring somebody else too, and easier.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I love automation. That's why I asked. I'm just always looking for any kind of automated tools that help make things a little bit easier.
I'm a huge fan of it. Huge fan.
Yeah. I think between automation, systems and processes, and then delegating, like that's really the gold of how you get yourself out of your business in the day to day.
100%. Yeah. You nailed it.
Well, this was so helpful and really interesting. I'm really going to think about this actually. This is cool because I'm switching some of my strategies too, to go into more. So I've got, I rehab, I wholesale, but then I also have some rental properties, just regular rentals, not multifamily or student housing or anything. And then I like creating notes, owner finance notes.
Ooh, fun.
Yeah. So, but I'm looking to shift more into some of that long-term passive properties again. So this might be a good strategy for me to think about, because we have a lot of colleges here in San Antonio. So that could be a good thing.
Yes. I know, I don't know how close you are, so forgive me on that, but I'm really, we had looked to go into a secondary market for student housing. And the reality of it was our college can only accommodate 4,000 people on campus. And I'm not sure what enrollment is this year because I haven't checked just yet, but it's normally 24,000 kids plus enrolled on our campus. Mm-hmm. So every year, 20,000 kids are looking for a place to live because they don't fit on campus. Mm-hmm. And so when we realized those numbers, we're like, do we really need to go to a secondary market? Like that's a lot of business, you know? But when in our research, we had research down in Lubbock, Texas, and there was a campus down there we were really interested in because it kind of had the same feel and the same numbers as it does here. So we're like, oh, that's our next go-to market is down in Texas. So.
Oh, you're talking about Texas Tech?
Yeah. So
my daughters are Aggies, so I'm like, there's a rivalry there.
That's where we're going next. And then we're like, but do we need to, and I think that was important, is like, do we need to go to multiple areas or can we just build something here? And we live outside of town, so I really only come to the office when I want to. I don't have to be here. I am kind of a weirdo though. I like being in an office to work. So I do come here, but we want to be in Florida a lot. We don't want to be here with our inventory. So that was a really big primary focus for me building the business, was the automation, the delegation, and so that it could run without me, so that it became truly passive income for me. And that's where we've gotten it to. So we love it. Nice.
Well, I appreciate everything that you shared and so admire your story. I just love
I am the cheesy midnight infomercial is what I say, but I now look at it because I always said I'm the black sheep of the family. My family thinks I'm on the couch eating potato chips. But I now look at it and I say all of those things are my badges of honor, because I wouldn't be where I am now if I hadn't have gone through those things. And so anybody else that's been through that, change your mindset. You're not the black sheep. Use those as a medal of honor and move forward and do something about it.
Yes, I agree 100%. Don't let those challenges hold you back. Let them see those as opportunities for growth. And, I like to use those as a motivator, personally.
Absolutely. You do not have to be what your past is. You do not have to let it define you. So Move on.
Exactly. Well, I love it.
Yes.
And thank you so much.
Thank
Do you
you.
want to share where people can get a hold of you in case they want to learn more about student
Yeah,
loans?
absolutely. So it's super easy to find me, with the digital world. DixieDecker.com is my website. There's tons of free training on there. Our good friend Josh has me on all the socials, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and tons of free content there. So if they never come to a seminar or buy a single thing, it's totally cool. Just go listen to all that free training and get some experience under your feet and go for it. So lots of good stuff out there. I know you put out lots of cool content. So yeah, so just DixieDecker.com and follow my business social media page, not my personal page, because I don't, I'm fun on my personal page, but I usually try to keep all the video stuff and teaching stuff over on my business pages. So yes, that's it.
Awesome. Well, thank you again so much.
Thank you.
Inspiration.
Thank you. I love doing these, so thank you for the opportunity.
Of course.